Yesterday we spoke about positive intonation, about positive information. Today, positive intonation about negative information. Hello, this is Peter Stewart. Welcome to today's edition of Get a Better Broadcast podcast and video voice. Yeah, short daily articulation, intonation, presentation tips as well. Episode 307 days in a row. Now, remember earlier on we looked at the fulcrum of facts in a story or sentence. That is, this person says this, that person says that. Well, that can be developed into situations when that person says this happened and that person says it didn't. Yeah, so they're not saying something different. They're actually contradicting what the original person said. In other words, negatives, opposites, contrasts and contradictions. Words like didn't, disagreed, refused, never, hadn't, not, no, none. They're usually key words because they point to what the sentence, story or script is about. And the same goes for words which have a similar job in a sentence: should, ought, may, and so on. So colouring such words then highlights an actual or implied view which is opposite. The moon is not made of green cheese suggests that someone has just said that it is. Now, a great place to look for examples of this kind of sentence and intonation construction is in a courtroom, because what happens in there is very much a case of opposing accounts. One witness says it was a man in a green hat, another said it was a woman in a red one. Yeah, you can see how those opposite accounts occur quite often in a courtroom. So if you started a story with "The trial of a police officer accused of murder has heard claims that he did not set fire to the hostel where 7 people died," then it's natural to highlight the word not, as I did then. "The officer was asked whether he had a can of fuel with him on the night. 'I did not,' he replied. The prosecutor said, 'You of all people should know that carrying fuel is disallowed.'" Well, here we've got another type of negative, haven't we? Disallowed. Unlike didn't, hadn't, couldn't, in which the negative is a suffix to the main word. Didn't is really did not, hadn't is had not, couldn't is could not. Disallowed, along with its cousins disorder, disappear, disadvantage, non-essential, non-fiction, unable, unhappy, untidy, unlucky, unusual, and so on, has a negative prefix. Yeah, the negative bit comes before the word rather than after it. So look back at that list which I've mentioned in the show notes and say them to yourself. Don't you naturally lift or colour the main part of the word rather than its negative prefix? You usually say disallowed, disorder, disappear, disadvantage. Yeah, you're highlighting the main part of the word rather than the negative prefix that comes just before it. The cat disappeared. You would rarely say the cat disappeared. Yeah, the cat disappeared. Whereas the non-fiction section, please, she was deeply unhappy. She was deeply unhappy. Not she was deeply unhappy. And so on. So that's apart from when we introduce our old friend contrast again. So if those sentences that I've just mentioned were contradicting known or implied information, then you would colour the prefix. The cat loves playing in the cardboard box. It appeared and then disappeared. Yeah? What I'm saying is usually you would say disappeared. But when you're contrasting it with something which has already appeared, then you're going to be pushing the negative prefix. The cat loves playing in the cardboard box. It appeared and then disappeared. Let's look at those other sentences as well and see whether the same thing happens. Normally you would talk about fiction and non-fiction books. Yeah? Subduing the non and highlighting the fiction. But I can see the fiction shelves But where is the non-fiction section, please? You're highlighting non because you're comparing it with the fiction that you just mentioned. So it's to do with context. Yeah? Someone is perhaps described as unhappy. You're lifting the part happy and you're suppressing the part un, until you're contrasting it with someone who you've said is happy. He was overjoyed, but she was deeply unhappy. Talking of negatives, and as I mentioned previously, be careful with words can and can't, because even though they're distinctive and different in my accent, in some accents they may sound very similar. Yeah? Some people say can and can't. So they could be misheard. Police say you can't drive on the new road. In my accent, hopefully that's clear. But in another accent, it may be subject to interpretation. Police say you can't drive on the new road. Yeah? So sometimes, where that misinterpretation could raise its head, because of your accent, maybe consider changing the word can, can't, can't to cannot, so it won't be misunderstood. Okay, I'm back tomorrow with Key 13, a brief bit on brackets, or, if you like, a pause for a part on parenthesis, as Get a Better Broadcast podcast and video voice continues. From London. And I'm Peter Stewart.